Welcome to the Practical Music Theory course. Here I'll give you everything that I've used for music theory and for shredding in terms of music theory, and I promise not to waste your time with anything you don't need. Cool? Now let's just get straight into it. The first thing that we'll cover today, and you've probably read the title, well, is the major scale. And I know you might be thinking that, yeah, music theory isn't that important for shred. Bro, think about it. If you don't know what you're going to play, like what notes you're going to play, you're always gonna sound out of key. You will never be able to play unique solos that cover your own style and like you have a unique style because of that. You are never going to sound like you know what you're doing, and you're probably never going to be able to improvise either with your band or just with a backing track. And at least for me, this is not a trade-off that I would like to make. Like, I would learn music theory in order to be able to do those things, because if I don't, well, I consider myself to be less of a musician, like worse of a musician. And maybe that's not the same thing for you, but probably it is if you've been watching me and you've been relating to my story. So here's what you do. Now the major scale consists of 7 notes. And of course there is not just one major scale, there is, well, 12 major scales. How did I know there are 12 major scales? Well, 12 notes. For each note we have a major scale, so yeah, just 12 major scales. But each major scale consists of 7 notes. So these 7 notes, we don't really need to remember for every 12 major scales, we don't need to remember every single note from them because it's too much work. And the way that you should remember it is, firstly, you may remember the formula, which is whole step. So the first time you skip 2 frets, so like you go, for example, from 3 to 5, this is called the whole step. So the formula goes like this. You have whole step, then again whole step, then half a step, whole step, whole step, whole step, and half a step. And again, a whole step means that you skip 1 fret, so you go from 3 to 5, and the half step means that you just go to the next fret, for example, from 7 to 8. Now, the really important thing is that this formula is all that you need to know about the major scale in terms of music theory. Now, in terms of guitar, I'll give you another formula which is so much easier to remember. You probably just wouldn't need to remember this whole step, half step shit. But what I meant was that if you know this formula, wherever you start, say for example you start on a G, you play this formula whole step, half step, and so on. And if you follow the same formula, for example starting on the G, well, you have the G major scale. What if you do the same formula starting, for example, on a C note? Well, you have the same scale, like the same scale type, so the major scale, but starting from the C note. So if you do the formula from a C, you have a C major chord, C major scale, sorry. If you do it, for example, say on F sharp, and you do the same formula, whole step, half step, well, you will have the F major scale. And it doesn't matter where you start, if you do the same formula, you have the same scale type. So another cool thing about the scale is that it doesn't matter which note we start on. For example, in G major, we have G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and again G. Okay, but what happens if we don't start on a G but play the same notes? For example, here we started on a G, we have G, A, B, and so on. Well, what if we started A, B, C, and so on? Well, it's the same major scale. The notes are the same, so the scale doesn't change, and we have to practice that in order to become familiar with the whole fretboard. So you know the major scale doesn't only stay in one position. Like, you don't just play here from the 3rd fret because you have to play the G major scale and you have to start on a G note. No, this is not correct. You have to just play the right notes, but it doesn't matter which note you start on. And now the major scale specifically for guitar, not for piano or some other instrument. Here's what you do. Imagine if you're playing on a 7th string, great, but I am not. So imagine you have an imaginary 7th string, like if you're playing on 6 strings. So you have the 7th string and again the other 6 strings that you actually have. So here is what you do. For example, if you want to play the G major scale, well, you're going to start on the 7th fret and play 3, 5, 7 on it. Then on the 6th string you're going to play again 3, 5, 7, and on the 5th string you're going to play 3, 5, 7 again. Cool. Now what you do from there on is you play 2 times 2, 4, 5, sorry, not 2, 4, 5, but 4, 5, 7. So you're going to do, instead of 3, 5, 7 like you did on the 5th string, now for the 3rd and for the 4th string, you'll play you're going to play 4, 5, 7. Cool, so you do 3 times 3, 5, 7, 2 times 4, 5, 7, and now 2 times for the second and the first string, you're going to play 5, 7, 8. And again, on the 7th string, we aren't starting on a G note because the G note is here on the 3rd fret of the 6th string. But we're going to just remember that scale shape in order to make it so much easier for you and not just remember whole step, half step, and all of those stuff. So again, 3 times for the first 3 strings, like the lowest ones, you play 3, 5, 7, then 2 times 4, 5, 7, and the last strings you're going to play 2 times 5, 7, 8. So how do you actually go to the next scale position of like the major scale? Now ditch the 7th string, you don't need to think about that. Well, here the 6th string and the 1st string, they're both E notes, right? Well, we played 3, 5, 7 on the low E string, like when we were starting out, but for the last thing we played 5, 7, 8 on the high E string. Well, they are the same notes as if we play 5, 7, 8 on the E string. Cool, so we can play that. So you take what you stopped with, like you take what you finished with, the second 5, 7, 8, and you start the whole formula again. So you're going to start with 5, 7, 8, then the same formula, like the same shape, but not the same fret. So 5, 7, 8, then 3 times 3, 5, 7, but it's going to be 5, 7, 9 because we are on the next position. So you're going to play 5, 7, 8, 5, 7, 9, 5, 7, 9, 5, 7, 9, then the B string requires a change, so you're going to go the 4, 5, 7, but different fret here, so it's gonna be 7, 8, 10, 7, 8, 10. And then for the next scale shape, like the 3rd scale shape, you're going to start with 7, 8, 10. And how did I think we are going to start with that? Well, we finished off with that, like the E string, the high E string, we finished off with 7, 8, 9, 7, 8, 10, sorry. So again, on the low E string, we take the thing that we played on the high E string, 7, 8, 10, and we continue the shape. And now we have to play the 5, 7, 8 shape, but it's different frets. So we play 7, 8, 10, then we're going to play 7, 9, 10, 7, 9, 10, and again start the whole shape all over. I'll put a scale diagram so you can really think and look how the fastest way to think about the major scale is taking what we finished with, putting it on the low E string and continuing the shape all over. So again, the shape is 3 times 3, 5, 7, 2 times 4, 5, 7, and 2 times 5, 7, 8. Okay, and now the modes of the major scale. It's just a cool word for saying, well, I'm going to play a major scale but not start on the root note. Like, I'm gonna play a G major scale but not start on G. Or I'm gonna play a C sharp major scale but I'm not gonna start on C sharp. So don't worry if you think that it's like hard terms and all of this stuff. It's not that hard. I'm gonna explain again. So you know how we played the G major scale starting on the 3rd fret of the 6th string? Well, then we went starting from the 5th fret, then we started from the 7th fret and so on. Well, when we started from the 5th fret and from the 7th fret, we are playing modes of the major scale. What this means is, again, we just start from an A note, so it's not G, or a B note, which is again not G, or a C note, which is again not G. And the really cool thing about the modes is that they have these weird names, like the second one is called the Dorian mode. So if you start on the 2nd note, like we did, we started on the 5th fret, which is the 2nd note, it's the A note. It's the 2nd note of the G major scale. We started on an A note and it's called the A Dorian mode. So what this means is that A is the 2nd note of some major scale. If, say, we started on the 3rd mode of the scale, which is going to be B, and the 3rd mode is called Phrygian. So we played the B Phrygian. Now what this means is that B is the 3rd note of some major scale. If we started on the 4th note of the scale, it's gonna be a C Lydian scale. And what this means is that C is the 4th note of some major scale. So really do take the time to learn these names by heart, but they're not that important. Now what we can do with these modes of the major scale is that they have different feels. So for example, if we want to sound dreamy, like dreamy and epic in say C major, we are gonna use the mode that has the epic and dreamy sound. And which mode is that? Well, it's the Lydian, and you have to learn these by heart. There's no other way. You just have to learn their characteristics. So how do we actually sound melodic, no, not melodic, but epic and dreamy over C major? Well, we're going to play the C, because C major, we take that note and put Lydian behind it. So we're going to play the C Lydian scale. And which scale is that? Well, it's just the G major scale, but we're going to play it over C major. And that's how easy it is. No need to remember, yeah, this is the third mode of the scale and so on. You just need to know which mode sounds the way that you want to sound right now and play that. And actually the minor scale is also a mode of the major scale, and it's the sixth one. Say for example we are in G again and we count up to the sixth note, so G, A, B, C, D, E, so E is the sixth note. Well, E minor is the same thing as G major, like it's not the same in terms of sound and characteristics, but they do have the same notes. So this is all that you need to know for modes, for music theory in terms of the major scale and how you remember that. So really take the time to learn these notes and these modes by heart and their characteristics, and take the time to improvise with them, or just play, for example, C Lydian over C major or G major over C major. This is what I'm talking about with C Lydian. It's the same thing, right? Take the time to get used to all of the modes before continuing to the next module.